The council chamber shook with the sound of distant alarms. Blue and silver banners hung from the ceiling, but they looked weak in the flickering light of failing power. Around the great circular table sat the leaders of the known galaxy, their faces pale, their voices sharp with fear. A giant holographic display burned above them, showing a fleet of black warships moving like a swarm through the stars. Each vessel looked like a blade, sharp and alive, covered in spines. Entire planets had already fallen to this enemy. Entire civilizations were gone. The council leader, a tall figure with green skin and golden eyes, rose from his seat. His voice trembled. "They are moving faster than our scouts predicted. They will reach the inner colonies within days. Our fleets are broken. Our weapons are useless against their armor. We must decide now." One of the smaller council members, with thin grey wings folded behind his back, pounded the table. "Decide what? There is no one left to call. The Varkan Empire is destroyed. The Sindari swore loyalty, then vanished. The rest of us stand alone." Another councillor, her scales shimmering in fear, hissed loudly. "Not alone. There is one species we have never called. A dangerous species. A people who live at the edge of the galaxy, far from our affairs. They call themselves humans." The chamber went silent. For a moment, even the alarms seemed distant. Faces turned, eyes wide. The word carried a weight that none wanted to hear. "Humans," whispered one of the elders. "They are unpredictable, violent, unruly. If they come, they may not leave again. But they fight," said another voice, sharp and desperate. "That is what we need. Fighters who do not surrender. If anyone can face the enemy, it is them." The leader's golden eyes narrowed. "You speak of myths. Humanity has never joined us. They rejected our alliances. They refused to bow to our authority. Do you truly believe they will help us now?" A young councillor stood, her hands shaking but her voice strong. "If we do not try, there will be no council left. No empire, no galaxy. We will all burn. Call them. At least give us a chance." The chamber erupted in argument. Some shouted that humans were too wild, too proud. Others shouted that without them the war was already lost. The sound of fear grew louder until the great leader raised his hand. Silence fell again. The holographic display zoomed closer, showing the enemy fleet breaking another defense line. Alien warships exploded like sparks in the dark, crushed under the swarm of black spines. The image was brutal. The chamber felt colder. The leader's voice was low. "Very well. If the end is near, then let us face it with every weapon we can find. Send the signal. Call for humanity." An old machine was activated at the center of the table. Golden light spun, forming a narrow beam that shot upward, vanishing into the stars. A single encrypted message raced across the galaxy, a last cry for help. The council members sat in silence. Some prayed to gods long forgotten. Others buried their heads in their hands. For the first time in centuries, the rulers of the galaxy felt powerless. Far above their world, the enemy fleet continued to move. Thousands of ships, black against the stars, spread like a storm. Each one carried soldiers who felt no mercy, no fear, no soul. The swarm was endless, and it was coming closer. One councillor whispered the thought all feared. "If the humans refuse us, then we are finished." The leader turned his golden eyes to the stars outside the window. His voice was heavy with dread. "Pray they answer. Pray they are still what the legends say they are." The chamber lights dimmed, leaving only the red glow of warning alarms. Outside, the black swarm grew larger, their shadows falling over the last worlds of the council, and far away, across the silent void, the signal reached a small blue planet. Earth turned slowly, wrapped in white clouds, a quiet world under the light of its sun. Humanity had not yet spoken. Humanity had not yet moved. The galaxy waited, holding its breath. The last shot shows Earth calm and peaceful as the shadow of the approaching enemy fleet stretches across the stars. The question burns in silence. Will humanity answer the call? Earth floated in silence, a blue jewel wrapped in white clouds, circling its golden sun. For centuries, humanity had been left alone, watched but never trusted by the wider galaxy. Now that silence was broken. A signal, ancient and desperate, had reached them. In orbit above Earth, the UNS Invictus loomed like a mountain of steel. It was the largest warship ever built by human hands, a Titan-class dreadnought. Its hull stretched for kilometers, armored with layers of dark titanium and glowing shields. Railgun batteries lined its flanks, while missile silos rested in hidden bays, waiting like clenched fists. Against the backdrop of Earth, it looked less like a ship and more like a fortress ready to move. Inside its command bridge, Admiral Sarah Holt stood with her hands behind her back. Her uniform was sharp, her face lined by years of war. She had fought in the Terran Rebellion, in the Belt Wars, and in the silent conflicts that never made it to the news. Her eyes were steady, but deep within them burned a question. The signal from the Alien Council replayed across the main screen. Holographic images of burning fleets and shattered worlds filled the room. The enemy swarm moved without mercy, cutting through every defense. Their ships were endless, their hunger unstoppable. Around her, officers watched in silence. Young men and women, armored Marines, old veterans with scars. The weight of the message pressed on all of them. Finally, Holt spoke. The galaxy ignored us. They feared us. They called us violent, dangerous, unpredictable. Now they beg for help. A commander leaned forward, his voice cold. Why should we answer? Let them fall. They never came for us when we needed them. Another officer shook his head. If the enemy crushes them, Earth will be next. The swarm will not stop. They will come here, to our homes, to our families. The bridge filled with quiet voices, arguments rising and falling. Some demanded humanity stay out, protect only Earth. Others shouted that this was the chance to prove to the galaxy what humans truly were. All eyes turned back to Admiral Holt. She lifted her chin and spoke with steel. Humanity does not run. Humanity does not hide. We fight, because if we do not, there will be nothing left to fight for. Prepare the fleet. We answer the call. Orders spread like wildfire. Across orbit, warships powered up, their engines glowing. The Invictus was joined by carriers, frigates, and destroyers. Docking bays opened as human soldiers marched into lines, their boots pounding against metal floors. Drones loaded weapons, mechs powered up, and rows of armored Marines stood ready, rifles in hand. In one hangar, Sergeant David Kane adjusted his helmet, his eyes hard but calm. He looked at the new recruits beside him, their faces pale. He spoke in a low voice that carried like iron. You've trained for this. You've bled for this. Today we show them what humanity means. We don't break. We don't bow. Remember that. Back on the bridge, the fleet's engines roared. Admiral Holt gave the final command. Set course. Open the slipspace gate. A massive rift tore open in space, bright and violent, pulling light into its heart. The Invictus moved forward, followed by the fleet. The blue of Earth reflected across their hulls one last time before the rift swallowed them whole. Inside the rift, space twisted and screamed. Colors bled into each other, and gravity pulled in strange directions. The human fleet pushed through like a spear, silent and determined, but they were not alone. Hidden at the edges of the rift, unseen by human scanners, the enemy swarm waited. Black warships tracked the humans, watching, preparing. Their spines shifted, their engines pulsed, their weapons locked. Far away, the Alien Council received word. The humans were on their way. Relief swept through the chamber, but fear still clung to their voices. Some prayed the humans would save them. Others feared the humans would only conquer what remained. Above the council world, the last fragments of their fleets floated like broken glass. Survivors drifted in escape pods, while fires burned in the sky. The people looked upward, waiting for something, anything, that might give them hope. The stars rippled. The rift opened wide. Out of the violent light came the Invictus, its dark hull shining like the edge of a blade. Behind it, the human fleet poured through, hundreds of ships in perfect formation. Gasps echoed across the council chamber as they watched the first human armada in history arrive on their doorstep. The fleet looked like a predator entering its hunting ground. Even damaged alien ships in orbit fell silent, their crews staring in awe. For the first time in the war, the galaxy saw something new. Not another retreat, not another surrender. A force that carried the weight of Earth's history, a people who had always fought to the last breath, but hope was short-lived. Human scanners lit up with warnings. A massive hostile fleet was already inbound, larger than anything yet seen. The swarm had followed them. Sirens wailed across the Invictus. Admiral Holt gripped the rail. Her voice was calm but sharp. They knew we were coming. All ships, battle stations. On the alien homeworld, the Council watched in shock as the shadow of the swarm spread across the stars. The humans had arrived, but so had the enemy. The camera closes on the Invictus as its guns power up, glowing with deadly light. The human fleet prepares for war. The enemy swarm darkens the sky, endless and merciless. The battle is about to begin. The stars were silent, broken only by the flashing wrecks of alien warships drifting through a nebula. Hulls. Cracked engines dead, their once proud banners floating in the void like torn cloth. The survivors had gathered here, a small fleet of battered vessels hiding among the glowing clouds of gas. Their shields flickered weakly, their weapons silent. On the bridge of the largest alien cruiser, Captain Thailand stood with his claws gripping the edge of the command table. His eyes burned with exhaustion. Around him, officers whispered in despair. Their fleets had been shattered, their worlds burned. They had sent a signal to a people no one trusted. One officer hissed in fear. "They will not come. Why would humans risk themselves for us? We abandoned them long ago." Another, voice shaking, answered. "They may not come for us, but they will come to fight. That is their nature." Before Captain Thailand could speak, alarms screamed across the bridge. A rift tore open in the nebula, a storm of light and gravity that shook every ship. The crew cried out, thinking it was the enemy. Then through the fire, something massive emerged. The UNS Invictus came first, its dark hull shining like the blade of a sword. Behind it, the human fleet poured out in formation, engines burning bright, weapons primed. Dozens of warships, carriers, and destroyers spread across the nebula like a wall of steel. Their presence was overwhelming. The aliens stared in silence, breath caught in their throats. Captain Thailand whispered the word that had been banned for centuries. Humans. The communication link crackled to life. On every alien ship, the image of Admiral Sarah Holt appeared. Her face was calm, but her eyes were sharp. "This is Admiral Holt of Earth's United Naval Command. Your signal reached us. We are here. Stand ready!" The enemy follows close behind. Some alien officers fell to their knees in relief. Others trembled in fear. Legends had spoken of humanity, of their strength, of their wars. Now those legends stood in front of them, larger than life, but the moment of awe ended quickly. Human scanners lit up with warnings. The enemy swarm had entered the system. The black-spined warships poured out of the dark like a tidal wave, their numbers beyond counting. The nebula shook with their engines, their spines glowing as they charged weapons. On the Invictus, sirens blared. Admiral Holt raised her hand. "All ships defensive line. Protect the survivors. We hold here." Railguns charged, missile silos opened, and fighter bays released swarms of human craft. Marines strapped into their drop pods, ready to board if needed. Every human ship moved with discipline, forming a shield in front of the alien fleet. On the alien bridge, Captain Thailand watched with wide eyes as humanity prepared for war. His officers looked at him uncertain. "Do we join them?" one asked. Thailand's voice was heavy but firm. "If we stay back, we die. If we fight beside them, perhaps we live. Signal all ships. We fight!" The swarm struck. Thousands of black warships surged forward, their spines firing beams of red light that ripped through the nebula. Explosions lit the void as shattered debris spun into the clouds. The first line of human railguns answered, their fire tearing into the enemy hulls with brutal precision. Each shot cracked open an enemy ship like an egg, sending fire spilling into space. Missiles streaked out from human carriers, splitting into swarms of smaller warheads. They struck the enemy like rain, shattering hundreds of ships in waves of fire. The nebula burned with light, brighter than any star. Alien crews gasped. They had never seen such weapons, such discipline. Humanity fought with fury, but also with precision. Every move was calculated, every shot placed with purpose. It was not chaos. It was war at its most focused, but the swarm was endless. For every enemy ship destroyed, 10 more poured forward. Human shields flared, hulls shook, and alarms screamed as railguns overheated. Alien vessels joined the fight, firing weak but desperate volleys. Together they fought side by side against the storm. On the bridge of the Invictus, an officer shouted, "Admiral, they are targeting the alien flagship. If it falls, the survivors will scatter." Admiral Holt's voice cut through the chaos. "Then we hold the line. Divert power. Bring the fleet forward." The Invictus roared into the fight, its massive guns firing in unison. Beams tore through the swarm, leaving holes in the enemy formation. Alien eyes widened in awe as the human flagship moved like a predator, unafraid of the storm. Captain Thalen gripped his console, his heart racing. For the first time in years, he felt something he thought was lost. Hope. But hope turned to dread in an instant. Deep in the swarm, a larger shape appeared. A ship bigger than the rest, its armor darker, its spines longer, its energy burning like fire. It was not just another vessel. It was a command ship directing the swarm with perfect control. On the Invictus, warnings filled the bridge. The giant enemy warship locked weapons, aiming directly at the human flagship. Admiral Holt narrowed her eyes. "Target the command ship. If it falls, the swarm will break. All guns, focus fire." The order spread across the fleet. Human railguns, missiles, and fighters turned as one, aiming at the colossal enemy. The nebula shook with the power of their fire. The swarm responded, charging forward in a desperate push to protect their command vessel. The battlefield became chaos, light and shadow colliding in waves of destruction. The human fleet pressed forward, the alien survivors followed, and the swarm fought with everything it had. The enemy command ship's spines glowed with power, energy building like a star about to burst. On the Invictus, alarms screamed louder than ever. The enemy weapon was aimed directly at them. Time was running out. The nebula shook with thunder. Explosions burned brighter than suns, casting long shadows across broken ships. Human railguns fired in steady rhythm, each shot tearing into the endless swarm. Alien survivors joined the line, their weapons weak, but their voices strong, cheering each time a human volley ripped through the enemy ranks. But in the heart of the chaos, the enemy command ship loomed. It was a giant of black metal, larger than the human carriers, its spines glowing with power. Energy pulsed along its body like veins of fire, building toward a devastating strike. On the bridge of the UNS Invictus, alarms screamed. Red lights washed across the crew. Admiral Sarah Holt stood unshaken, her eyes locked on the glowing monster ahead. "They mean to destroy us with one shot," her tactical officer warned. "That energy spike could cut this ship in half." Holt's voice was calm but sharp. "Then we strike first. All batteries lock on the command ship. Fire everything we have." The order spread across the fleet. Hundreds of railguns turned as one. Missile bays opened wide. Human fighters swarmed ahead, weaving through enemy fire like sparks in a storm. The first volley struck. Railgun slugs slammed into the command ship, cracking its armor with thunderous force. Missiles followed, blasting holes into its flanks. Fighters swept across its hull, unloading fire at close range. The nebula lit up with fury. Alien crews watching the battle gasped in awe. For generations, they had seen fleets fall like dust before the swarm. But humanity did not falter. Humanity roared into the storm, their ships bleeding fire, yet pressing forward with relentless force. On the alien flagship, Captain Thalen clutched the arm of his chair, eyes wide. "They fight like no other," one officer whispered. Thalen's voice shook with a mixture of fear and hope. "No, they fight like humans." The swarm answered with rage. Thousands of smaller warships hurled themselves into the human line, beams slashing, claws tearing, kamikaze strikes slamming into shields. Human ships shook under the impact, shields flaring white, armor denting. Frigates vanished in bursts of fire. Carriers staggered as enemy ships rammed into their hulls. On the Invictus, the deck trembled. Sparks rained down from ruptured panels. Officers shouted over the roar of weapons, shields at 50%, forward railguns overheating. Damage on deck 12. Still, the Admiral did not move. "Keep firing," she ordered. The human flagship unleashed another volley, its main guns cracking through the command ship's hull. Chunks of black armor spun away into the void, glowing with fire. But the monster did not stop. Its spines flared brighter. Energy gathered into a single blazing point at its core. The weapon was ready. Admiral Holt's eyes narrowed. "Brace!" The command ship fired. A beam of raw energy split through the nebula, brighter than any star. It slammed into the Invictus, shaking the Titan-class dreadnought from bow to stern. The shields flared, then shattered. Armor buckled, metal melted, alarms screamed. Crew were thrown to the floor as fires burst across the decks. For a heartbeat, it seemed the flagship would be torn apart. But the Invictus held. The great warship bled smoke and flame, but it still lived. On the alien flagship, stunned silence fell. None had ever seen a vessel survive the command ship's full strike. The impossible had just happened. Admiral Holt rose from the floor, gripping the railing with blood on her face. Her voice carried across the comms, calm but fierce. "They think us broken. Show them we are not. Return fire." The order ignited the fleet. Railguns and missiles roared in unison, hammering the command ship with everything humanity had left. Alien vessels joined in, adding their weaker but determined firepower. The enemy command ship staggered. Cracks spread along its hull. Explosions tore open its flanks. For the first time, the swarm shuddered, their coordination faltering. The tide began to turn. Alien survivors cried out in disbelief. "They can win," one whispered. "The humans can win." But victory was still far. More enemy reinforcements poured into the system, endless waves rushing toward the human line. Already the fleet was bleeding. Frigates shattered, cruisers burned, soldiers screamed across the comms as decks were lost. On the Invictus, Holt gripped the console, her voice steady despite the chaos. "We can break them, but we need more than firepower. We need to cut out their heart." Her tactical officer looked at her with dread. "You mean boarding action?" She nodded. "Send word to the Marines. We take the command ship from the inside." The order spread through the fleet. Drop pods loaded. Human soldiers strapped in, their armor gleaming under the red lights. Sergeant David Kane checked his rifle, then looked at his squad. "We are the blade. Remember why we fight. For Earth, for every world that fell. For the ones who cannot fight back." Pods locked into place. Engines roared. The command ship's massive shadow loomed ahead, its weapons still burning, its hull cracking but alive. Admiral Holt gave the final order. "Launch!" The pods blasted into the void, streaking like meteors across the battlefield. Enemy fighters turned to intercept, but human escorts cut them down. Flames lit the void as the Marines raced toward the giant ship. The screen closes on the human pods, slamming into the enemy command ship's hull, cutting through its black armor. Inside, the swarm waited. The battle for the monster's heart was about to begin. The enemy command ship burned in silence, torn open by human fire and boarded by Marines. Inside its dark halls, battle raged. Armored humans fought the swarm in brutal close quarters, rifles cracking, blades flashing, grenades ripping through twisted corridors. The monster ship shook under the assault, but still it lived. At the same time, far below on the alien homeworld, a different battle was about to begin. Beneath the capital city, hidden under layers of stone and steel, a massive vault waited. Its doors were carved with symbols older than memory. For centuries, it had remained sealed. Few even knew it existed. But now, both humanity and the swarm had discovered its location. On the surface above, alarms wailed. Alien civilians fled into shelters, while soldiers dug trenches and manned turrets. They had seen their world burn in the sky. Now they prepared to defend what lay beneath their feet. In orbit, Admiral Sarah Holt received the message. The vault was real. The swarm was already moving to reach it. She turned to her officers. "If the enemy takes what is inside, we lose everything. Marines are already aboard the command ship. Now we send another force. The vault must not fall. Sergeant David Kane was among those chosen. Still bruised from the boarding assault, he loaded his rifle once more. His squad strapped in, armored head to toe, their faces grim but ready. Dropships roared out of the Invictus, cutting through fire as they plunged toward the alien capital. The descent was chaos. Enemy fighters swarmed the skies, but human escorts tore into them, clearing a bloody path. Anti-air fire streaked upward from the ground. Dropships weaved through smoke and burning towers, engines screaming as they landed hard among the ruins. Kane's boots hit the ground first. His squad formed a circle around him, weapons raised. The alien capital burned around them. Towers toppled, flames reached the sky, and the air was thick with dust. Alien soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder with the Marines, their strange armor cracked, but their will unbroken. Forward, Kane growled. The vault is beneath the palace ruins. Move. The joint force pushed through the streets. Every corner was a battlefield. The swarm poured out of the shadows, their spined bodies tearing into defenders. Human rifles spat fire, alien plasma burned the air, grenades thundered. The ground shook as larger enemy beasts crashed through walls, only to be cut down by rocket fire. Step by step, covered in blood and smoke, the Marines and aliens forced their way toward the palace ruins. Finally, they reached it. The palace had been reduced to rubble, its proud towers broken. Beneath the ruins stood the vault. Its colossal doors shimmered with faint energy, symbols glowing blue against the stone. The alien commander beside Kane fell to his knees. This is it, the heart of the first civilization. It was hidden to keep the galaxy safe. Kane looked at him, breathing hard. Safe from what? Before the alien could answer, the ground shook. The swarm arrived in force. Hundreds of spined warriors charged through the smoke, their screams cutting through the night. Behind them, a massive beast with claws like swords roared, smashing through walls to reach the vault. The Marines formed a line. Aliens joined them. Rifles cracked, plasma bolts seared, rockets streaked. The battlefield turned into fire and thunder. Bodies fell, armor cracked. Still they fought, refusing to give ground. In the chaos, engineers worked on the vault door. Human techs connected scanners and cutters. Alien priests whispered ancient words, their voices trembling with fear and hope. Sparks flew as they tried to unlock the seal. Kane shouted over the noise. Faster! We cannot hold them much longer. The beast roared and slammed into the line, sending soldiers flying. Kane threw himself forward, unloading his rifle into its eyes, then firing a rocket at its chest. The explosion ripped it apart, but the blast threw him against the rubble. He staggered to his feet, blood dripping down his face. Behind him, the vault door groaned. The symbols flared brighter. The lock disengaged. The massive doors began to open with a deep grinding sound. Every soldier froze. Even the swarm paused, as if sensing the power that stirred. Inside the vault, light spilled out. Rows of ancient machines stretched into the darkness, glowing with strange energy. At the center stood a colossal weapon, tall as a tower, wrapped in cables and steel. But the design was not alien. Its shape was familiar. Too familiar human. Kane's eyes widened. The soldiers around him whispered in shock. The alien commander stared, trembling. This cannot be. This was buried here before our history began. How can it be theirs? The Marines stepped forward, weapons raised, staring at the ancient machine. It was sleek, angular, brutal in design. Human markings glowed across its surface. Kane whispered the thought that chilled them all. This was not built here. This was left here, by us. The vault trembled as the machine came alive. Energy surged through the chamber. Holographic maps lit up, showing stars, worlds, and ancient battles long forgotten. Above them, the swarm let out a terrible cry, louder than thunder. They had not come to destroy the vault. They had come to claim it. The chamber shook with power as the ancient human weapon awakened. Blue light spread across the walls, revealing massive engines, control panels, and rows of silent machines. At the center, the great weapon pulsed with energy. Soldiers, human and alien alike, stared in shock. None dared to move. Sergeant David Kane tightened his grip on his rifle. He could not believe what he was seeing. Human symbols glowed bright on the weapon's core. They were not markings of today's Earth. They were older. They were from a time before recorded history. The alien commander, his voice trembling, spoke first. This weapon was sealed here by the First Council. They told us it was a danger, that no one should ever touch it. But they never told us why. Now I see why. It belongs to you. The chamber lights flickered. Suddenly a hologram appeared above the weapon. It was a man. His uniform was strange, older than any design known today, but clearly human. His face was calm, his eyes sharp. He spoke in a deep, steady voice. If you are hearing this, then the war has begun again. We fought them once, we won, but we could not destroy them forever. So we built this vault, and we left behind the weapon. We left it here, far from Earth, hidden beneath your world, to give the galaxy a chance if they returned. The soldiers gasped. The alien commander stepped forward, his mouth open in disbelief. You mean the swarm? This is not the first time they came? The hologram continued. They came before your empires, before your councils. They came for Earth. We stopped them, but at a cost. Entire fleets were destroyed. Millions of lives lost. We pushed them back into the dark, but we knew they would return. When they did, you would need this weapon. The chamber fell silent. Even the swarm outside seemed to pause, as if waiting. Admiral Holt's voice crackled over the comms. Kane, report. What is happening down there? Kane stared at the glowing hologram. Admiral, the vault holds human technology, older than anything we know. It is a weapon built by our ancestors. And it says the swarm has attacked before. There was a long silence on the line. Then Holt answered. Understood. Secure the chamber at all costs. That weapon cannot fall to the enemy. The hologram flickered again. This weapon will link to your fleets. It was designed to command, to unite, to strike at the swarm's heart. But beware. The swarm learns. Every time it returns, it grows stronger. If you fail, Earth will fall. And with Earth, the galaxy, the message ended. The weapon pulsed brighter, waiting. Then the swarm roared. The chamber shook as their forces surged forward again, crashing through the ruins, claws tearing into stone. Explosions shook the walls. The defenders raised their weapons once more. Hold the line, Kane shouted. The aliens beside him screamed their battle cries, firing plasma into the horde. Marines unleashed their rifles, cutting down wave after wave. The floor turned slick with blood and broken bodies. Still the swarm pressed closer. The weapon hummed, projecting a star map across the chamber. At its center, one planet glowed brighter than all others. Earth. The swarm now knew its true target. Inside the chamber, engineers scrambled to connect the weapon to the fleet above. Cables sparked. Consoles lit up. The massive machine hummed as if it could feel the coming storm. But suddenly, the lights dimmed. The ground cracked. From the swarm's ranks, a new figure stepped forward. It was taller than the rest, armored with black carapace, its body glowing with red fire. Its eyes burned with intelligence. It did not charge. It walked slowly, calmly, like a commander. The alien commander's face turned pale. No, that is no beast. That is one of their leaders. We thought they had none. We were wrong. The creature raised a claw. The swarm froze behind it, silent, waiting. Then in a voice that shook the air, it spoke in broken words. Humans, we remember you. You hid your weapon. You think it will save you. It will not. We have learned. This time Earth will burn. Every soldier in the chamber went still. The silence was heavier than any explosion. Humanity's oldest enemy had just spoken. Kane raised his rifle, fury burning in his chest. Then come and try. The swarm leader screeched, and the horde surged forward once more. The chamber became chaos. Bullets and plasma tore through the dark. Marines and aliens fell side by side. The weapon's power built to a deafening roar. On the fleet above, Admiral Holt saw the reading spike. The weapon was linking. Energy poured into the Invictus and then into every human warship in orbit. Giant holographic maps spread across the bridge, showing swarm fleets gathering beyond the stars. Holt clenched her fists. This is not just a battle for this world. This is the beginning of the war they tried to erase from history. Down in the vault, the ancient weapon unleashed its first pulse. A shockwave of blue energy blasted through the battlefield, hurling the swarm back, shattering their lines. The swarm leader staggered but did not fall. Its burning eyes fixed on Kane. The creature hissed, voice sharp as blades. "Earth is ours." The vault shook violently as the weapon projected a new map. At its center, glowing bright, was a swarm superfleet hidden on the edge of the galaxy, bigger than anything humanity or the Council had ever faced. The war was only beginning. The vault trembled as the ancient weapon finished its pulse. The battlefield outside was covered with the wreckage of swarm bodies, smoke rising from their burning carcasses. For one moment, silence ruled. Soldiers thought they had won. But then the weapon projected the star map again, brighter and sharper. At the far edge of the galaxy, a shadow spread across the map. Thousands of red markers lit up, too many to count. It was a swarm fleet, not a fleet of hundreds, not even thousands. A superfleet, larger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Entire systems burned red beneath its path. Sergeant David Kane stared at the hologram, his chest tight. He had fought swarm beasts on the ground and seen their ships die in space. But this was different. This was endless. The alien commander fell to his knees, whispering, "No defense can stop that. No Council fleet can even slow it. We are finished." But Kane's voice cut through the fear. "No, we hold the line. Humanity has faced extinction before. We will face it again." In orbit, Admiral Sarah Holt stood at the center of the Invictus Bridge. The projection of the swarm superfleet stretched before her officers. The crew whispered in disbelief. Some froze, their faces pale. Holt did not blink. "They are coming for Earth," she said. "That is their goal. If Earth falls, the galaxy falls. We must be ready." Messages from alien Council fleets began to flood in. Some begged for protection. Some spoke of retreat. Others demanded the weapon for themselves. Arguments tore through the channels. Old rivalries resurfaced as fear grew. Holt silenced them with one order. "Enough! This is not the time for politics. You saw what the weapon showed you. You saw who they are after. Humanity will not abandon Earth. We will not abandon this galaxy. Stand with us, or stand aside." Her words struck like iron. Slowly, one by one, alien commanders agreed. Ships pledged their firepower. Fleets aligned with the humans. For the first time, the Council was united not by choice, but by fear. Down in the vault, engineers worked to stabilize the weapon. Its power linked directly to the fleet above, giving human warships sharper targeting, faster responses, stronger shields. Alien officers watched in awe. Human technology older than their history now commanded the battlefield. But the swarm was not idle. Their leader, the black-armored figure with burning eyes, raised its claws. Across the ruins, the swarm beasts howled again. Ships in orbit shifted into new formations. They were not retreating. They were waiting. Kane saw it too late. "They are stalling us. The real attack is not here. It is out there." Above, Admiral Holt's sensors confirmed it. Space bent as the first ships of the swarm superfleet emerged from the dark. Massive, jagged warships slid out of the void, each one the size of a city, their hulls alive with writhing movement. Behind them came more and more, until the stars themselves seemed to vanish. The Invictus shook as alarms screamed. "Contact! Multiple enemy fleets inbound. Numbers too high to calculate." Holt clenched her jaw. So it begins. Human and alien fleets formed into defensive lines. Battleships spread their shields. Carriers launched fighters. The sky lit up with engines as thousands of ships prepared for the storm. The swarm superfleet wasted no time. Their first wave surged forward, Titanic warships firing energy beams that split through space. Entire Council ships were cut in half with a single strike. Smaller swarm vessels darted through the chaos, tearing into escorts. The void became a sea of fire. Human ships answered with brutal precision. The weapons link made them faster, deadlier. Railguns thundered, missiles streaked, lasers carved into swarm hulls. The Invictus led the charge, its guns tearing a swarm dreadnought apart in one crushing volley. But for every enemy destroyed, 10 more appeared. On the ground, Kane and his squad fought side by side with alien soldiers to hold the vault. The swarm leader advanced slowly, its gaze fixed on the weapon. Bullets and plasma blasts struck its armor, but it shrugged them off. With every step it took, defenders fell back. "Keep firing!" Kane roared, unloading round after round. But deep down he knew this was no ordinary enemy. This was a commander of the swarm. The alien leader shouted across the battlefield. "It is not enough. Even with your weapon you cannot win. They will devour you as they devoured before." The words cut like knives, but Kane's resolve hardened. He raised his rifle higher. "Then we will make them choke on every world they try to take." In orbit, Admiral Holt watched as the swarm fleet spread across the map. The weapon pulsed again, showing red markers advancing not only on Earth, but on dozens of alien homeworlds. It was a war on every front, designed to break them all at once. The officers turned to Holt, fear in their eyes. "What do we do, Admiral?" Holt's voice was cold and steady. "We fight. We make our stand here. If Earth is their prize, then Earth will be their grave." The weapon glowed brighter, linking deeper into the human fleet. New systems activated, old codes unlocked. The Invictus shook as power surged through its guns, and then for the first time the swarm superfleet answered with its true weapon. A colossal ship emerged from the dark, larger than anything seen before. Its hull stretched for miles, bristling with spines and glowing with sickly light. Entire fleets could fit inside its shadow. The bridge of the Invictus fell silent. Even the weapon seemed to pause. Kane looked up at the sky, his chest tightening. He could feel it. Something ancient, something unstoppable. The swarm leader pointed at the colossal ship and hissed. "This is the end of your kind." The colossal swarm ship opened its maw, a burning sphere of energy gathering at its core. Aimed straight at Earth, the colossal swarm ship opened its maw, a sphere of burning energy building in its core. It glowed brighter than a star, aimed straight at Earth. Every soldier and officer froze as its power grew. The entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. On the Invictus, Admiral Sarah Holt gripped the rail of the bridge. Her crew stared at the giant screen, faces pale. One officer whispered, "That blast could crack Earth in half." Holt's voice cut through the fear. "Then we stop it. All ships focus fire on the supership. Everything we have, now!" The order spread across the fleets. Human battleships turned their guns. Alien cruisers powered their beams. Carriers unleashed their last waves of fighters. Thousands of weapons fired at once, filling the void with fire and thunder. The swarm ship staggered under the barrage, its shields flaring. Armor split. Chunks of its massive hull tore away. But the energy sphere in its maw kept growing, brighter and hotter, unstoppable. Down on the ground, Sergeant David Kane and his squad fought through the ruins to hold the vault. The swarm leader marched toward the ancient weapon, its armor glowing with fire, claws cutting down defenders with ease. Kane planted his feet, rifle raised. His squad was nearly gone, but he refused to move. "You want Earth?" he shouted. "You'll have to take it over my dead body," the swarm leader hissed, stepping closer. "So be it." Their blades clashed, steel against carapace. Sparks flew. Kane struck again and again, each blow fueled by fury. But the swarm leader was stronger, faster. Its claws cut across his armor, throwing him to the ground. Pain shot through his chest. Still he crawled forward, lifting his rifle with shaking hands. Above them, the weapon roared louder, pulsing energy into the fleet. The Invictus's guns doubled their firepower. Human ships cut through enemy lines like knives. Alien fleets rallied, pushing back wave after wave. Yet the colossal ship still held, its terrible blast seconds from release. Admiral Holt's eyes narrowed. She knew what had to be done. If that weapon fires, Earth is gone. One ship must strike its heart. And it will be us. Her officers turned, shocked. "Admiral, you cannot mean—" "I do," Holt snapped. "The Invictus was built for this. Prepare for ramming speed." Gasps filled the bridge, but no one disobeyed. The crew straightened, hands flying across controls. Engines roared as the mighty flagship turned toward the colossal enemy. Back in the vault, the alien commander stood beside the weapon, chanting ancient codes. The machine responded, beams of blue energy locking onto the colossal ship in orbit. But the swarm leader lunged forward, tearing into him. The commander fell, blood on his lips, but with his last breath he screamed, "Finish it!" Kane staggered to his feet, every bone screaming in pain. He saw the controls, saw the weapon glowing, waiting for a hand to guide it. He dropped his ruined rifle and slammed his palm onto the console. The machine surged to life, light engulfing the chamber. The swarm leader roared, slashing toward him. Kane turned, blade in hand, and met it head-on. Their clash echoed like thunder. In space, the Invictus charged forward, guns blazing. Enemy fire ripped across its hull. Decks split. Flames spread. Yet still it moved, unstoppable, a spear aimed at the swarm supership. Holt stood tall on the bridge. For Earth, for humanity, for the galaxy, the colossal swarm ship unleashed its final blast. A burning wave of destruction tore through space, aimed directly at Earth. At that same instant, the Vault weapon fired. A beam of pure energy shot from the planet's surface, connecting with the Invictus. The ship glowed like a star, its weapons magnified 100-fold. The flagship became the weapon. The Invictus slammed into the colossal swarm ship, driving the beam straight into its core. The sky erupted, a blinding explosion ripped across the void, tearing the colossal swarm ship apart from within. Its burning pieces scattered into the dark. The superfleet shuddered. Without their leader, their formation broke. Council and human ships tore through them, victory blooming in the chaos. On the ground, Kane stood over the fallen swarm leader. His blade was buried in its chest. Its burning eyes dimmed at last. Kane collapsed beside it, exhausted but alive. Silence fell across the battlefield. Then cheers erupted. Human and alien soldiers raised their weapons to the sky. The impossible had been done. The swarm had been stopped. In orbit, what remained of the fleets gathered. Hulls were broken, ships burned, but they stood together. Humanity had led them through the fire. Earth had survived, but Admiral Holt's flagship was gone. The Invictus had given its life to save the galaxy. For a long moment the stars were silent in respect. Kane rose from the rubble, looking up at the heavens. He whispered, "We are not finished. If they come again, we will be ready." The weapon in the vault went dark, its duty complete. But the star map lingered, showing red scars on the galaxy. The swarm was broken but not destroyed. Humanity had won the day. Yet the war was not over. As the fleet celebrated deep in the dark edges of the galaxy, another swarm world awoke. Millions of new ships began to rise. The enemy was wounded, but not dead.